Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into something really profound, often quite challenging. It's the story of the Armenian people, their resilience, their history, and the very complex things happening right now. We're going to be focusing quite a bit on the recent conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, which Armenians often call Artsakh, and we'll trace how its deep historical roots connect to, well, some genuinely surprising geopolitical situations today.
Absolutely. And our mission really is to unpack all of that for you. We want to shed light on the historical context, the suffering, yes, but also the frankly incredible resilience of the Armenian people. We'll connect that history to what's happening now, uncovering details maybe you haven't heard, all based on our source material. Think of this as a way to really get up to speed on a complex topic, offering insights and maybe some unexpected links.
Okay, so let's zero in on Nagorno-Karabakh then.
Yeah.
Sort of set the scene. Geographically, historically, it's got these deep Armenian roots, ancient churches, but it's inside Azerbaijan.
That's exactly right. Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, as Armenians know it, it's steeped in Armenian history. You see churches there that are centuries old. But the geopolitical setup, that was largely engineered. Our sources point back to the Soviet era, specifically to Stalin. He essentially handed this land, which was overwhelmingly populated by ethnic Armenians, over to the administration of Soviet Azerbaijan.
Why would he do that? What was the thinking there?
Well, it seems like classic Soviet strategy, really. Keep everyone slightly off balance, dependent on Moscow. By putting an Armenian enclave inside Azerbaijan, you basically build in a source of perpetual tension. It kept both Azeris and Armenians looking towards the central Soviet power. It was quite manipulative, a geopolitical pressure cooker, if you will.
Right, engineered conflict. So fast forward about 4 years to 2020, Azerbaijan attacks. What happened?
Yes, in 2020, Azerbaijan launched a pretty major offensive against the Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh. Their stated goal was, well, to take control of the territory and force the Armenians out.
And the results were
Yeah.
pretty bad, I understand.
Devastating. Yes. Many Armenians were killed. Ancient Armenian churches, cultural heritage sites were bombed and destroyed. The sources we looked at used the term ethnic cleansing to describe what happened. Forcing Armenians out if they weren't killed. Many fled. Ended up as refugees in Armenia itself.
Okay, and what about Russia? They had security guarantees with Armenia, didn't they? Why didn't they step in?
That's a really crucial point. Russia did have these past security agreements with Armenia, but they didn't intervene to protect the ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Their justification, according to the source, was that the guarantees applied to the internationally recognized borders of Armenia proper, not this specific region.
So kind of a loophole, essentially.
You could see it that way. And it leaves Armenia in a really tough spot. It's a small, landlocked country, still developing, historically surrounded by, well, powers that haven't always been friendly. You know, Turkey, historically, it's a vulnerable position.
And that vulnerability, that history you mentioned, it connects directly to something even larger, doesn't it? The Armenian Genocide. This recent conflict doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Not at all. To understand the present, you absolutely have to understand that past trauma. The Armenian Genocide happened towards the end of the Ottoman Empire, around the end of World War I. And our source material makes a specific point here. It argues Armenians were targeted precisely because they were Christians, a distinct religious minority in the Ottoman context.
And who exactly carried it out? The source mentions the Young Turks, but makes a distinction.
Right. So the Young Turks were initially this reformist movement. Some sources say they initially wanted to grant more rights to Armenians, believe it or not. But it was a radical faction, an offshoot called the Committee of Unity and Progress that ultimately planned and executed the genocide.
The scale is just staggering.
It's almost incomprehensible. 1.5 million Armenians systematically killed, slaughtered, and countless others forced on these death marches through the desert towards Syria. Just unimaginable suffering.
Now, digging through the material on the recent conflict, 2020, there was a detail that really caught my eye. Something surprising about Israel's role.
Yes, this is a, let's say, very significant claim in our source material. It states quite directly that Israel sold weapons to Azerbaijan, and further that these specific weapons were then used in the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, used, as the source puts it, to carry out the ethnic cleansing and, quote, to kill the Christians.
Yeah.
The source insists this is confirmed and deeply researched.
Wow. Okay. And there were also mentions, maybe less confirmed, about Russia also selling weapons to Azerbaijan.
That's mentioned too, yes, but the source seems to emphasize the Israeli connection with more certainty. It really makes you think, doesn't it? About global politics, arms deals. how these things work.
It really does. Strategic interests versus maybe other considerations. It shows how complex these international relationships can be.
Absolutely. Rarely straightforward.
So after all this history, this trauma, where does this leave the Armenian people today? You mentioned resilience. Let's talk about the diaspora, the communities around the world.
Right. The diaspora is a huge part of the Armenian story. After the genocide, survivors scattered. Many went to neighboring countries like Syria, Lebanon, and perhaps surprisingly, Iran.
Iran. That does seem counterintuitive given the usual narrative. Tell me more about that.
It really does go against the grain, as our source puts it. But yes, apparently there's a large, established, and openly practicing Christian Armenian community in Iran, even today. They go to church, maintain their traditions. The source suggests that while they might not, love the regime, their ability to practice their religion is generally respected. They're largely left alone in that regard.
That's fascinating. A real complication of the standard picture.
Yeah.
What about the U.S.?
Oh, definitely. A very significant Armenian community in the United States. Our source specifically highlights Glendale, California, describes it as, a really nice part of LA, vibrant, largely populated by Armenians and also Cubans. And it emphasizes qualities often associated with the community. Hardworking, strong family ties, really contributing to the fabric of the country.
Now, the source did briefly touch on something less positive, a mention of an Armenian crime ring.
Yeah.
How did it frame that?
Yes, it did mention that involved in financial crimes, apparently, but it was immediately put into context. The source was very clear. These are bad apples, absolutely not representative of the wider Armenian population, which is overwhelmingly seen as, successful, hardworking, and deeply family-oriented. It's important not to generalize.
Understood. So, wrapping this up, it feels like we've covered a lot of ground, from Nagorno-Karabakh and its engineered tensions,
And the devastating impact of that recent conflict.
to the deep historical trauma of the Armenian Genocide.
And the specific context of religious persecution.
And then these really surprising geopolitical twists, like the confirmed Israeli arms sales to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, that definitely stands out. Plus, the resilience, the diaspora, finding communities, even in places like Iran.
It paints a complex picture.
It really does. And if you zoom out, you see how decisions made generations ago, like Stalin drawing those lines on a map, still have huge consequences today. It really fuels these long-lasting conflicts. And it forces us to ask tough questions about, the international arms trade, right? And how certain narratives about countries like Iran can persist even when you have facts on the ground, like this Christian community, that challenge them.
So here's a final thought to leave everyone with. Considering everything the Armenian people have faced, the historical tragedies, the ongoing geopolitical pressures, what does their survival, their success in diaspora, their enduring spirit actually tell us? What can we learn from that about identity, about perseverance against really immense odds? Something to think about.